New week, new division. Today's going to be a fun one because we have the NFC North continuing our offseason program of breaking down every single division and predicting every team's record. Again, today we have the NFC North. It was the best division in football last year. Could it be yet again? I think so, but there's a lot of doubt with these teams, a lot of questions, a lot of movement. Let's break it all down. Let's talk about it and predict their records. Let's kick it off here with the 2024 NFC North champions, the Detroit Lions. This offseason was busy, but really not for player movement. It was more so focused on the coordinator movement. This is a team that lost both Ben Johnson, one of the hottest head coaching commodities in the last 5 to 10 years. He went to a division rival in the Chicago Bears. We'll talk about them in a moment. But you also lost your defensive coordinator in Aaron Glenn. Both of those guys were so pivotal in not only providing great plays and putting their guys in the right position, but they were so key for the culture change here in Detroit next to Dan Campbell. So I'm interested to see how this team bounces back from losing those coordinators. Now, I will say on the other side, this is a team that last year they just dealt with so many injuries that at one point it became insurmountable. They lost in the playoffs in embarrassing fashion, really. Jared Goff had like 5 interceptions. But this is a team that, sure, you lost coordinators, but you're gaining health. Hopefully this team can stay healthy all season long, and they've added some depth to help along the way. They drafted Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State, drafted Tate Ratledge. Both guys can help in the trenches offensively and defensively. They also added DJ Reed, who will be immediately one of their best corners. This is a team that I like their offseason. They did what they could. They knew they were going to lose those coordinators, but I'm excited to see how they bounce back. I do think they run into some early season hurdles, losing those guys that were so key to the culture. It's just going to be a bit different, adapting to new coordinators and new play calls live and in living color, play after play in key moments every single week, especially when you have some tough teams to open up the year. So I think they open up 1-2. And again, this is a team where they're going to find themselves at this point in time, especially after that loss to Baltimore in week number 3. I think they bounce back in a pretty way. They win the next 5 games in a row. Cleveland, Cincinnati, big one against Kansas City in Kansas City, and then they beat Tampa Bay. Honestly, I was back and forth on that Tampa Bay game after a tough stretch, but I gave them the win. They go into the bye week 5-2, and they come out of the bye week at home against the Minnesota Vikings. I think they can win that one as well. So at the midseason mark, you're 6-2, and I think the Lions proved to everybody at this point, we're back. We're ready. We're better than ever, and we're healthier than ever, especially when you talk about last season. After that, you go to Philadelphia and Washington. You lose those. 2 offenses that are honestly just overmatching your defense at full health or not. And these are teams that are elite NFC contenders for a reason. So you lose both of those on the road, tough environment. You're 6-4. Now after that, you have an easier stretch. I'll say that. The Giants at home. You like that one. Packers at home. You had no problem with them last year. The Packers are pretty much the same roster. I like you there at home. Dallas, you should win that one. The Rams are going to be the toughest team in this stretch because I really believe in the Rams this year. But they've had Matt Stafford's numbers since he left town. I think you win that one, and you beat Pittsburgh and Aaron Rodgers as well. Going into the last 2 weeks of the season, I think you're going to split these games. Whether if you beat Minnesota, whether if you beat Chicago, I think you finish the year 12-5 in the race for the number 1 seed in the NFC side of things. At the end of the day, though, look, I still believe in this team. I think they're ready to prove to everybody they're more than just some coordinators. Now let's move over to the aforementioned Chicago Bears. They stole Ben Johnson, and he is now the head coach in this new era of Chicago Bears football. This is the guy in Ben Johnson that came in with an identity, and we saw him build that identity in Detroit with heavy offensive line play and good running backs. They want to run the football and protect it. He's already left his mark on the Chicago Bears roster. He brought in Joe Thuney from the Kansas City Chiefs, Jonah Jackson on the defensive side. He brought in Dayo Odegbo from the Indianapolis Colts, very underrated edge rusher in his regard. But then they also went out there and continued to add to this identity in the NFL draft. Colston Loveland was one of the best run blocking and overall well-rounded tight ends. And I love Kyle Monangai. Late in the draft there, they were able to get one of my guys. out of Rutgers. He's a bowling ball. He's built low, but he runs lower. He's kind of like a David Montgomery build. So if you're not familiar, familiarize yourself because Kyle Monangai will be a key part of the Chicago Bears offense. But let's get into it, man. I think this is a team that has an easier schedule than their division rivals like Green Bay, like Minnesota, and the Detroit Lions. And I think they capitalize on it. I think they go 3-1 in their first 4 games. Going into the bye week, 3-1. This is a team that has found their momentum, and they're going to thrive from day number 1. But coming out of the bye week, how do we look? I think you get your revenge on Washington from last season. You had them beat, but we all know the Tyreek Stevenson situation, and they lost on a Hail Mary. I think in Washington, you get the win this time. You beat New Orleans, who might be the worst team in football. And then after that, you have a tough stretch, man. You go to Baltimore, and then you go to Cincinnati. I could see you beating Cincinnati, but outside of that, Baltimore might be the most complete team in the NFL on the AFC side of things. You lose both of those games. So at the midseason mark, just like you'll see in a lot of these NFC North teams, you're 5-3. Now let's go into the second half of the year. I think you bounce back from those back-to-back losses. You beat the Giants and you beat Minnesota in Minnesota. Key road time victory there. But then you look at their schedule. They have Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Green Bay, Cleveland, Green Bay, San Francisco, Detroit. Perhaps no team has a tougher last 2 months of the season than the Chicago Bears as far as the physicality that they're going to face and just the overall quality of the teams they're going to face, again, assuming every team is at full health. So I think you lose Pittsburgh, you lose Philadelphia, you lose Green Bay. This is an oh shoot kind of a moment. You're 7-6, you started off the year all at the highest of highs, but now you're dealing with some adversity. And this is where teams are made. Are you going to bounce back from this 3-game loss, these 3 losses in a row? Or are you just going to kind of fold and fumble and go to the side of the road? I think Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams will find a connection. And I think this is where we find out who the Bears are because I think they win 3 of the next 4. I think they go 10-7, and I'm not going to spoil it, but I think they're in a pretty good spot to make the playoffs this year. Now, the team that shocked everybody last year, not because of their coaching staff, we knew they'd be solid there. I mean, it's not because of their roster. It was because we didn't believe in their quarterback situation. Sam Darnold, of course, shocked the world, became a Pro Bowl level player, and this is the guy that went off and got paid over $100 million based on how he played for the Vikings last season. This is a Vikings team that now is in the J.J. McCarthy era, a guy that is technically in his rookie season, and he's coming off an ACL injury. So he has a lot of hurdles to jump over this season, and that's why ultimately I'm a little bit lower on the Vikings than the general consensus. But don't get me wrong, this is a Super Bowl ready roster, but they're only going to go as far as JJ takes them, and I just don't know if that is playoff or Super Bowl level. Regardless, I like their draft, solid draft there. They added Jonathan Allen from the Washington Commanders, one of the best interior defenders in the game. They get some help there. They also help the offensive line with Ryan Kelly and Will Fries, 2 guys that come over from Indianapolis. So I like their offseason. They only really lost Sam Darnold, and this is a team that has the same roster coming back, just finely tuned. So let's get into it, man. I think they show the world from day number 1 that this is a team that is still ready to compete at a very high level. I think they lose to Chicago, JJ's first start on the road in Soldier Field. Tough environment. I think we can expect a loss there. But I think they bounce back. I think they could beat Atlanta, Cincy, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland going through the AFC North with relative ease. You go into your bye week at 4-1. JJ's feeling hot. He's feeling good. Maybe he gets a little overzealous because coming out of the bye week, I think you lose 2 of these 3. Philadelphia and Detroit, 2 of the best defenses in the league. You lose those. Again, just tough environments to expect a rookie quarterback to win you those games. Now, the Chargers in LA, I think he can win that one. I can see that being a loss as well, but I'm going to give the Vikings the benefit of the doubt. You're 5-3 at the midseason mark, just like the Chicago Bears. After this, though, this is where you run into a bit of a hurdle, man. You have Baltimore, Chicago, in Green Bay, in Seattle. Then you got Washington. All of those guys are contenders in their own conference to different degrees. I think you're going to lose a lot of those games. 6-7 in that stretch. I even gave you the win against Baltimore as a bit of a momentum boost, right? Maybe that's a big JJ game there at the middle point of the season. But then after that, I think you do close out the season strong. I think you put yourself in a position to make the playoffs. beating Dallas, Detroit, Green Bay, losing to the Giants because upsets happen. And if you're upset about this New York Giants loss late in the season, I'll pretty much put it this way. It doesn't impact where I would have them ultimately come postseason time based on tiebreakers. So upsets happen. I gave the Giants that one to finish 9-8. And to close off with the Cheeseheads, this is a team that has a coach and a quarterback that I believe in more than a general consensus. Most notably, Jordan Love. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the league today. I know a lot of people question his ability, but I've been on this train since Utah State. I cannot leave this train at this point in time. I have so much stock in Jordan Love that if he turns out to be a Hall of Fame level quarterback, well, I look like a genius. This is a team that went into the NFL draft and they added playmakers. Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, two guys that if you just get them the football, you just got to let them go to work because they're that special of talents. Anthony Belton really wasn't a big fan of him, but at the end of the day, he should help up on this offensive line. Outside of that, their offseason was okay. Lost some offensive linemen, added some secondary help. Honestly, they lost two guys that are worse than what they brought in. So Green Bay ultimately got a lot better this offseason. I think they do start off relatively rough, though, man. And this is a prediction not based on my belief in the players. It's more so that they just got really dealt a very tough hand as far as their schedule compared to their division rivals. I would argue that this might be the toughest schedule in any of the NFC North schedules. So for the Green Bay Packers, expect them to not have a great year. They lose 2 of the first 4 games. You head into your bye week, 2-2, ready to bounce back. And I think they do. They win 3 of the next 4 coming out of the bye week, being rejuvenized coming out of that bye week, and you're 5-3 at the midseason mark, just like Minnesota and Chicago. But how do you respond? Are you better than those teams, especially with my belief in the quarterback? I think you're going to put up a fight. I think you lose to Philadelphia, but you can bounce back with 2 big wins after that, and now you have a tough stretch to close out the year. Again, this might be the toughest stretch out of anybody in the NFL to close out the year. Detroit, Chicago, Denver, in Chicago, Baltimore, maybe the best team in the NFL. And then closing out the year in Minnesota, there might not be a stretch harder than what Green Bay has to face to close out their year. And I think it reflects on their record. 9-8 to close out the year, winning 2 or 3 games throughout that stretch. And again, if you're upset about 1 or 2 of these games, it's not going to matter based on the tiebreakers if they're going to make the postseason or not. So 10-7, 9-8, I think that's a perfect spot for the Green Bay Packers. So if you're a Minnesota fan or a Green Bay fan, you're looking at the screen and you're saying, oh, and there's no way we are the worst team in the division. But I rebuttal with that and saying you're still a top 10 team in your conference. You just have the toughest conference and division to go through. This is a team in Minnesota and Green Bay I still think finish above 500, either a 10 or 9 win football team. You're just right outside. If 7 teams make the playoffs, you're 8, 9, and 10. That's pretty much where I view this division. I am that high on this division where I think all 4 teams have a chance to make the playoffs. But the Bears, I think, will make the playoffs, and the Lions will make the playoffs. Now, why do I have the Bears over the Vikings or the Packers? Well, it's as simple as this. For the last 35 NFL seasons, there's been at least 4 new playoff teams, combining both conferences, that make the playoffs that they didn't the year before. So Minnesota and Green Bay, I think, are the 2 teams in the NFC that if there were teams to drop out, it would be them, and for good reason. Green Bay, incredibly tough schedule. Minnesota, you technically have a rookie quarterback, and if he doesn't come out to play at the level that Sam Darnold did last year, you might be in some trouble. Chicago, on the other hand, you have a ready roster right now. Sure, you have a rookie head coach, and that not always works out, but I just think they have a very complete roster top to bottom. I think they can sneak in as the 7th seed in the NFC side of things. So that is my NFC North 2025 standings predictions. Let me know down in the comments where I went right, where I went wrong. I'm sure this is going to turn some heads.